Well, the State of the City address was started by Virginia Young, and that was in 1982. She had the first State of the City address, and it was at City Hall chambers, followed by, and Mayor Dressler followed the tradition in 1984, and then Mayor Cox. I recall going to Mayor Cox's farewell address, his last State of the City address. I think it was at Pier 66, and afterwards he announced that he was going to take his Boston Whaler all the way up to upstate New York and go through all those canals up there, and he did, and he wrote about it in a three-part message that was published in some of the local publications. But what I have done over the years with the State of the City address is I've talked about things that we've done in the last year, some current events, and also some things that would be coming up in the future in the city. And I've also used it to announce some policy ideas or some policy goals, like ethics reform in the city of Fort Lauderdale, some different issues that we've put on the ballot. I've used it to announce different measures. But I don't have any announcements like that tonight, because on March 17th at 11 o'clock, I'm going to be passing the gavel to Mayor-elect Jack Seiler. Jack, are you here? Congratulations. So I apologize if some of you have heard some of these stories before, but I'm going to try to talk a little bit about the last 24 years, my last 24 years of service, and it's the service of some of the other commissioners and city managers, and many of you on the advisory boards live this. But there are some newcomers here in Fort Lauderdale that haven't heard some of these things, and I'm going to try to do it in maybe 5 or 10 minutes. So I'm going to go fast. I'm going to have to skip a lot of things, but I've never liked these addresses to go on too long. A lot of people ask me what possessed you to run for office or be a city commissioner, and I really have to go back to when I was a student at Broward Community College. I did a paper on government, and because I was a bit of a lazy student, I didn't want to spend a lot of time in the library. I usually did my term papers by interviewing people. I could just go and I could take notes and write a report after talking to people instead of having to look things up. We didn't have the internet back then. Al Gore hadn't invented it, I guess. So I thought, well, learn more about the city government than to interview the mayor. And that was Virginia Young. She took time out. She lived down the street. My father was a good friend of her brother, Irv Schumann. And she took time out and told me all about the cities. And one of the things that she told me about on the city were the city advisory boards. And she said, we have this great group of people that advise the city commission on different issues. And I wrote that in my report, and I did get a B on it. Later on, when I heard that there was an opening on the city's Marine Advisory Board, and in 1976, Mayor Shaw appointed me to the city's Marine Advisory Board. And wow, what a great experience that was, serving on a board. And it really got me interested in the city. I started attending city commission meetings. I ran for city commission in 1982. And back then it was an at-large voting system. There were 5 commissioners serving. The top vote getter was mayor. Second was vice mayor. And third was mayor pro tem. And fourth and fifth were commissioners. It was an at-large system. There was no districts. And we had a system where if more than 10 people filed for office, there would be a primary to narrow it down to 10, and then a second runoff to reduce it to the final 5. That year I ran, and in the primary I came in 5th. Wow, that was pretty good. And then in the runoff I dropped to 7th. And I didn't know much about campaigning back then, and there was a gentleman that knew a lot more about campaigning, and there was a better campaigner than me, and that was John Rostrom, who beat me in that race and got to serve 3 years sooner than I did. And then I joined him on the city commission in 1985 when Mayor Young retired, and got to serve with Bob and Rob and Dick Mills and John, and it was a wonderful experience. It really was something. And being elected at large, we campaigned all over the city. I had special support in this area of the city in the Southwest. See, the Southwest, Bob hates it when I talk about this, but the Southwest hadn't had a commissioner since the 1960s, and was underrepresented. Now, Bob said that, well, that's because anybody, once they get successful and get some money, they move to the Southeast. Didn't you say that, Bob? Yeah, well, you know. Well, it was my wife that wanted to move to the southeast, so I would have stayed in the southwest probably. But, you know, being a part of that, and Bob and I were talking about it earlier, that the city employees came to us with an idea to have a mission statement, and we put members of the community together, and the members of the community wrote that mission statement, and we did some wonderful things back then. In 1986, we put a bond issue on the ballot to raise taxes. That's something that isn't very popular today. And we had money for the beach redevelopment, Fort Lauderdale's beautiful Riverwalk, money for our neighborhoods, our parks, the Museum of Discovery and Science, the aquatics complex, and even some money for some neighborhood master plans. And all of those things passed, along with single-member districts. We put single-member districts on the ballot, and that passed also. And then we started electing our commissioners from 4 districts and the mayor at large. So I ran for re-election in 1988 as a district commissioner and served District 4. And then in 1990, there was a discussion as we were redeveloping the beach about the idea of making A1A a pedestrian area and no longer being able to drive along A1A on Fort Lauderdale Beach. And some in the community didn't think that was a good idea, so we put it on the ballot. And the overwhelming majority of residents said that A1A should always be available for automobile traffic unless a special election is held and the people say it's okay to do away with A1A. So that was one of the things that the city settled by referendum. And today there's a law that the city can't relocate A1A inland without the permission of the voters. And then in 1991, when Mayor Cox retired, I decided to run for mayor, and what an exciting race that was. It was really my toughest opponent. It was a great race. You know, I didn't have a lot of endorsements in that race. I didn't have the support of the Sun-Sentinel, or the Miami Herald, or the Chamber of Commerce, and the unions. When you think, well, wow, you know, what's left? How could you get elected? Well, I had 2 groups that were national organizations that endorsed me, and you know, some have questioned whether I have the ability to bring the community together. The 2 national organizations that endorsed me that year, one was the Sierra Club, and the other was the National Rifle Association. Now, how's that for bringing the community together? You know, the tree huggers and the Bambi killers. That was really something. But I did have the endorsement of 2 important organizations, also with the Marine Industries Association and the Association of Realtors. And I was able to get 62% of the vote in a 3-way race in the primary, and honored to serve as mayor. And again, in 1994, we had a discussion in the community about development of an entertainment complex on that lot that's at A1A and Las Olas Boulevard, that lot that today is a parking lot but used to be the Oceanside Holiday Inn. And the city bought it, used tax dollars with the idea that we'd redevelop it someday. And there was a proposal to do an entertainment complex similar to Beach Place or Riverfront or Cocoa Walk in Miami, right there on that corner. Well, with my real estate background, I felt uncomfortable with having what would amount to 4 entertainment complexes in the city, and these were complexes with special liquor licenses. I felt that we'd be lucky if we could support 2, Beach Place and Riverfront, and the county had made a deal to build one at the convention center, and a 4th one at A1A and Las Olas I didn't think was a good idea. Plus, when we tore that hotel down, and you went over Las Olas Boulevard and looked out into the ocean where the hotel used to be, it was such a beautiful view. And the community responded, and we put on the ballot again, we settled the score, and the voters said that nothing can be built there except for a parking facility or a park. And someday, it's used for parking now, which is great for beach access. Someday, I hope that parcel ends up a park, you know, maybe a hardscape park, and you know, over the next 150 years, it could be a lot of different things. But as the buildings and the private property on the beach gets redeveloped, I think that's very important to have that open space there on that corner. So that was another important score that we settled by a vote. Then in 1995, we went on the ballot again to ask you to raise your taxes. And this time it was for parks.